I have a special guest on the show. I love having this guy on. We talked once about 6 months ago, and it was a terrific show. His name is Daren Martin, and he's a workplace culture expert, author, speaker, and consultant on workplace issues, and the author of A Company of Owners, Maximizing Employee Engagement. Daren, I hope you can hear me after all that.
I can hear you. Awesome.
Good deal. Temporary studios here, just trying to make things work until we move into our beautiful brand new digs in a couple of days here. But Daren, I wanted to talk to you about a concept that is reasonably new, I will say, and I've seen a lot of companies go to this, including local companies here. There are a lot of business people out there right now that are going to what is referred to frequently as the Google model. And this is a big open office space, no partitions, no cubicles, none of that. It's a shared space. And this is assumed to build a sense of teamwork and camaraderie. And on the surface, it sounds like a pretty good idea, but practically, my understanding, it is not working at all.
Yeah, it's full of holes. You know what's ironic about this? You say a new idea, but I remember in the 5th grade and that was a long time ago, trust me, when we went to they called them pods, and it was the open classroom setting.
Yeah.
So, schools were first to do this way back when, and I think they've gotten away from it since then. And companies just, have implemented this for a myriad of reasons, some of which is, kind of Big Brother wants to keep an eye on you, but some of it is really to build kind of connections between people, take the walls down, people will interact more. The early results are showing, though, that that's not necessarily, it's also fraught with peril, that there's some real downside to it as well.
Now, I remember I worked for a radio station group years ago. They built a new building, and this is exactly what they did. They had one big room, and we all had our desks. We all had a phone on our desk. But I was in a sales capacity at that time, and it was such a distraction. You were trying to talk to a client. The guy at the desk next to you was trying to talk to his client. It was a great distraction. Whenever anybody came in the room, you had to stop and acknowledge them. Hey, how you doing? The small talk would happen. It was impossible to get any work done. I found myself creating appointments so that I could leave and go home and make all of my phone calls and then come back to work.
Yeah, your experience is not uncommon, and these are the problems, right? It's the noise level has become a big issue. The lack of privacy has become a big issue. And, probably the least productive person in the company is a person with a cubicle or a desk right by the door, because they're constantly, acknowledging people as they're coming and going. So I think there's some upside to it. I do think that, it can create a more open kind of atmosphere, but I just think we're going to see a backlash. We're already seeing a backlash as people are starting to say, hey, look, this has driven my productivity down, not up. And the interesting thing is that people that are in office situations are not complaining about not having enough contact with, this doesn't seem to be a real problem for them. They're seeing the people they need to see when they need to see them. I think, companies are better off to create open social settings like GE did back in the day with the in-house gyms where you've got, people connecting with each other after work as they're running together, or, cafeterias where people can get together over lunch. But if you've got a lot of phone stuff you have to do or a lot of thinking you have to do, the open work environment is not ideal.
Yeah, and most of my work was in the creative writing area. Good luck with that, because you really can't focus with all of this confusion and distraction and conversation and phones ringing going on all around you.
No, so study after study has shown that multitasking is a myth, and that the switching cost, anytime you get distracted off your task, it's a killer. It's just a time killer. And that's the constant distraction that goes on in a much more open environment like that.
Have you had, you consult all kinds of businesses, Daren, all over the country. Are you hearing from administrators who are saying, look, something isn't working, what do we need to do here? Are they going back to an older model?
I'm actually hearing it from the folks that are living it day to day. Generally, a lot of times your managers are in an office. They're not experiencing it necessarily. Here's the difficulty. Is quite frankly, it's a lot less expensive. I mean, when you've got to, outfit offices and do all of that, the finish out alone on, moving into a new space, that it's got to be very appealing from a financial standpoint for companies to go, look, we just create this big open tent and it's awesome. I think what they're not taking into consideration is the productivity costs that come along behind that.
Isn't there a bit of insecurity also with the lack of privacy?
Absolutely. And, I was reading one of the articles that was talking about the fact that, and I deal with this all the time, that, if we don't keep an eye on people are on Facebook all day. If people at the company, if a lot of people at your company are doing other things at work with the big bulk of their time and they're not being watched, you don't have a personnel problem. You've got a culture problem. What is it about the company and what is it about their work that is so unfulfilling and so unengaging? I mean, I wrote a whole book about this, about the disengagement, that we see at your typical U.S. company. It's abysmal. And I think that's more about companies not taking responsibility for building something that people show up, they're excited about working, they're engaged, they're fully connected with what the mission is of the company so that they're not looking for ways to distract themselves all day.
How do you know if you have a culture problem in your company?
Oh, there's a myriad of ways. But one of the ways is if the hidden culture is different from the stated culture. Stated culture is what you put up on the wall. Hidden culture is what I hear about when I walk around and talk to people at all levels of the company. They go, no, that's not who we are. That's not how we do things. So the bigger that gap is, the bigger a problem you have.
Is oftentimes one of the biggest problems perhaps an employee that's not pulling their weight?
Okay, that's a killer. And, companies do themselves a big disservice by keeping low performers, and it's generally not a huge number, but poison and low performance will drag your company down quicker than anything. Your team is only as strong as your weakest link. And if you got a bunch of weak links, basically what happens is your high performers all leave because they don't want to work in an environment like that. And then you end up with the sea of mediocrity. So, you really have to manage people up or manage them out.
Yeah, the open office concept. I actually know a guy who is a CPA and works in that environment. And I don't know how in the world you do that. But I spoke to him the other day, and what he does is he'll go in and try to get stuff done during the day. He'll wait till everybody leaves, and then he'll work all evening long, sometimes to midnight, because it's the only quiet time.
Yeah. I think the solution for a lot of this in many industries, we're moving towards the ultimate open environment. It's called my living room.
Yeah.
That's where I work as an author and a speaker and a consultant. I work out of my house, and I think that's a way that companies, for jobs that can do that, can get the productivity and the freedom out of people and have the cost savings as well.
Oh, and dude, you got it figured out. That's perfect, and I appreciate you so much, and I hope we have a chance to talk again soon. There's 100 things we could cover on another visit. I know you got to run to a meeting. Daren Martin, thank you so much for being on our show again.
Thank you. Anytime. Love being on here.
Thank you. That's Daren Martin, workplace culture expert, author, speaker, and consultant. His book is A Company of Owners, Maximizing Employee Engagement. That's today's